Okay, there we go. So now we're on. All right. So now I'm visibly on YouTube. I'm live. So for those who are subscribed to my YouTube channel, then of course, you can tune into the YouTube. So as I said before, we're gonna have like just a little PowerPoint, man, and go into biblical marriage versus the Roman marriage system. All right. And as I explained earlier, for those who tuning in and didn't hear my explanation before, is just basically I was just saying that many people, of course, they feel that you have to be married on you have to be married on paper or have a license in order to be considered married, right? So of course, as Israelites, we tell people that yes, me and my wife, we're married. We've been married for like 3 years now. All right. Well, do you have a marriage license? No, we don't. We're married in the eyes of the Most High, according to the scriptures. The scriptures are what constitutes you to be married, all right? Not a piece of paper, according to the laws of this government, all right? So remember, the government didn't give marriage to man. The Most High gave marriage to men, all right? So of course, just wanted to go into just a little brief history of it of how Rome had established their marriage system or whatnot, right? So of course we want to start with the rape of the Sabian women. The Sabian people were a Japhetic people, okay, that were inhabitants of Italy, all right. So they were your Italian speaking peoples, or your Latin speaking peoples, okay, that occupied the country of what we know as Italy today. All right. So they were a Japhetic people. So if you could check out the screen, and I'm gonna read a little bit of it. All right. So it says the rape occurred in the early history of Rome shortly after its finding by Romulus and his mostly male followers. All right. So remember who Romulus is. Romulus is supposed to be the founder of what we know as Rome itself. Okay. So it says it says seeking wives in order to establish families. The Romans negotiated unsuccessfully with the Sabians, right? So they tried to negotiate with the Sabian people to actually ask them for wives, right? But to no avail, they did not. All right. Hold on one second. One second. Hold on, my brother trying to find the link to the YouTube. I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna send it to you by email. So check your email, officer. Okay. So again, um, so the Sabian people had told the Romans like they did not want to negotiate with them. They did not want to intermarry with Romulus or his followers. Okay. So now it says seeking wives in order to establish families, the Romans negotiated unsuccessfully with the Sabians, who populated the surrounding areas. The Sabians feared the emergence of a rival social and a rival society, and refused to allow their women to marry the Romans, right? So they feared a rival nation coming up against them. So they refused this. They refused to align themselves with the Romans, okay, or give them their women. So consequently, the Romans planned to abduct the Sabian women during the festival of Neptune. All right, the festival of Neptune, Exquator It's supposed to be a festival. It's supposed to be like their harvest festival where they worship like their harvest god to protect their crops or something like that. So it says they planned and announced a marvelous festival to attract people from all nearby towns. All right. So it says, according to Levi, many people from Rome's neighboring towns attended. And it says, including folk from the Canaanese, the Crustumines, and the Antinomites, and many of the Sabians. At the festival, Romulus gave a signal at which the Romans grabbed the Sabian women and fought off the Sabian men. The intent abductees were soon implored by the Romans to accept Roman husbands, right? So again, so they waited till this festival was going on. Then what happened was they gave a signal, they set up ambush, they went in, they took the women from, the Sabian men, and when they took them back to their cities and towns, they implored these women to marry them. All right. So this was like the induction of the Sabian women. Okay, so now it says Levi claims that no direct sexual assault took place. That's what he says. He says, albeit the fuller evidence, when compared with the latter history, suggests a seduction based on promises by the Romans, promises which were inadequate in any event. So basically, they began to promise the Sabian women, certain things in order for them to be able to marry them, right? So it says Levi said that Romulus offered them free choice and promised civil and property rights to women, right? So this was the catch in which the Romans threw at the Sabian women. All right, so they said, you know what, you'll have free choice, and of course, you'll also be able to have access to civil and property rights. You know what I mean? So that's what they were going to give to their women. All right. So it says, according to Levi, Romulus spoke to them each in person, declaring that what was done was owing to the pride of their fathers. All right. So the reason why they snatched these women, or they're basically saying, if you would have just gave us the women anyway when we asked you the first time, this wouldn't have happened, right? So that's basically how they coming at the Sabian people. So it says, who had refused to grant the privilege of marriage to their neighbors, right? So remember, they did not want to give their daughters unto these Romans, all right? It says, but notwithstanding, they should be joined in lawful wedlock, participate in all their possessions and civil privileges, right? So of course, that's what they wanted to do. They said they wanted them to be joined in lawful wedlock and then participate in all the possessions, you know what I'm saying, and civil privileges that comes with, of course, the marriage. All right. So it says, and then which nothing can be dearer to the human heart in their common children. It says this did not include the men being responsible for meeting the needs of the children, right? So they wanted to breed the children and not take care of them. So they wanted to leave that responsibility to the women, all right? But they sat there, they said, all right, we'll promise you, we'll give you, rights and things of that nature, right? You'll have your freedom of choice and all of that. Choose your husband or whatever the case may be, as long as you marry us and give us children and have children by us, right? So of course there was a shortage of women amongst Romulus and his followers. Okay, so they had to go and snatch another population. So it's basically similar to how we read in the book of Judges when the 11 tribes had crushed the tribe of Benjamin, right? Almost to the point where there was like literally almost 600 men left. And these men, they had to take the daughters of Jeshua of Gilead in order for them to repopulate, themselves and to become a blossoming tribe once again. All right. So it's in the same fashion, man, in which the Romans was basically doing. Okay. So you had an incident that happened in Israel, then you had that incident that happened in Rome. So marriage in ancient Rome. All right, what was it like? Well, let's find out what marriage was like in ancient Rome. Okay, so of course, let's read this insert here. Of course, you can basically pretty much Google this information, the rape of the Sabian women and things of that nature. They have like a long history about it, all of that. Okay, so So let's read. So it says, marriage in ancient Rome was a strictly monogamous institution. All right. So of course, marriage in ancient Rome was strictly monogamous. All right. Monogamous meaning that it says that it was just basically one man, one woman. All right, or one woman to that man. All right. So of course, we know that other civilizations practice polygamy, right? But in Rome, it was practiced. Monogamy was basically the institution of marriage in which they practiced. All right. So it says marriage in ancient Rome was strictly a monogamous institution. All right. So that's what they practice. Okay. So of course, and it says a Roman citizen by law could have only one spouse at a time. Right. So of course, does that sound familiar? That's exactly how they practice it here in America itself. Okay. And we're going to find out some things also pertaining to that as well. All right. So in Rome, you could only have one spouse. All right. A man could only have one wife, you know what I'm saying, during his lifetime. All right. So it says, or one spouse at a time. So it says the practice of monogamy distinguished by, distinguished the Greeks and the Romans from other ancient civilizations, right? So, of course, this made ancient Greece and Rome completely different from the other cultures, all right, or civilizations, right, that were around about them, all right? So we see that many other cultures, they practice what we know as polygyny. And, of course, the Greco-Romans, they did not, all right? So it says, so the practice of monogamy distinguished the Greeks and the Romans from other ancient civilizations in which elite males typically had multiple wives. And that is very much true. You can read about the accounts in the Bible, right? Of course, like our fathers, all right, like King David. King David had multiple wives and concubines. You read about King Solomon, 300 wives, almost 1,000 concubines, and 700 princesses. You know what I mean? So it was not uncommon for a king in the ancient Israel to have more than one wife. All right, but in the Greek civilization, you could not be a political figure or a leader and have multiple women. All right, unless you were dealing under the table with the prostitution and things of that nature, and all the whoredom that came along in ancient Greece and Roman civilization and culture. All right. So it says, in which elite males typically had multiple wives. All right. So other civilizations and cultures, elite males had more than one wife. Greco-Roman monogamy may have risen from the equalitarianism of the democratic and republican political systems of the city states. It is one aspect of ancient Roman culture that was embraced by early Christianity, which in turn perpetuated it as an ideal in later Western culture, right? So, of course, then again, it's showing you that in ancient Roman culture, it was also embraced by, of course, early Christians, the institute of monogamy, all right, having only one wife, all right, a man having only one wife, all right, and then it says, and then of course it says which in turn perpetuated it as an idea in the latter Western culture. All right, so now you see we're a part of Western culture. Okay, so you see that Rome was a heavy influence um, on Western civilization that we're in right now. All right, America, just as they call it, the beast. All right, so of course, it says in the scriptures in the book of Revelation, this beast exercised all power as the beast before it. Right. So what beast was before America? It was Rome. All right. Rome was the absolute and complete power in the Mediterranean region, in that portion of the world before America came on the scene. All right, they were the most vicious, the most violent, the most fierce beast upon the face of the earth. Okay, so now you see America comes on the rise, and everything pretty much there. They have the Greco-Roman philosophy and ideology here being practiced in America itself, especially the institution of marriage. All right, so of course, I'm going to read the definition of what monogamy is and so on and so forth for those who do not know what that is. All right. So it says monogamy. It says it is a form of relationship in which an individual has only one partner during his or her lifetime or at any one time. Okay. So that's what basically monogamy is. All right. For those who don't know, that is a definition for those. For those who don't know what monogamy is. All right. Hold on. Let me finish reading this. And then I wanted to pull this out about the Western culture. It says Western culture sometimes equated with Western civilization, which we're in right now, the Western world, Western society, or what they will call European civilization. All right. So it says is a term used very broadly to refer to a heritage of social norms, ethnic values, traditional customs, belief systems, and political systems, and specific artifacts and technology that has some origin or association with Europe, right? So of course, as you can see, a lot of the things in which is here in America, we know it has an origin. It goes back to what we know as in Europe. All right. So it says the term is applied to the European countries and countries whose history is strongly marked by European immigrants, colonization, and influence. It says, such as the continents of the Americas, Australasia, whose current demographic majority is of European ethnicity, right? Of course, America, and it says the Australasia, all right, was like Australia and those other places, man. Of course, that are around Australia, they're heavily populated by what we know as the Indo-European or the Caucasian. Okay, so it says, and it's not restricted to the continent of Europe. Western culture is characterized by a host of artistic, philosophic, literacy, and legal themes and traditions. The heritage of the Greeks, the Romans, uh, Jewish, Celtic, Slavic, and other ethnicities and uh, linguistic groups. All right, so it's saying that they basically they drew a lot of their ideas and things of that nature from these great cultures or civilizations. All right, so pretty much like I said, from the Greeks and the Romans, of course, the Jews, the Celtics, and also the Slavics, all right, and other various ethnicities, man. Western civilization has taken, laws and policies and so on and so forth, right? Cultures, ideas, all of that. Okay. So just like you get a lot of the pagan holidays in which we're keeping now from Babylon, of course, Celtic, the Celtic practices of Halloween, all of that other stuff, man, America pulls in, man. And it took from these different cultures and civilizations. All right. So of course, as we know, marriage, it was taken from the Greco-Romans, all right, the Greeks and your Romans, okay. So remember, as we read, it was a monogamous institution, okay. So they practiced monogamy heavily, and that's what those Romans, when they took those Sabian women captive, That's what they pretty much were promising those women, all right, that they would be the only ones they won't have to live by any type of multiple wife or anything like that, be the second or third wife. No, you'll be equal to me. That's pretty much what the Romans were promising those women that were there. All right. So that's how they had to seduce these women into being their wives. All right. By promising them those things. Okay. Equal privilege and things of that nature. All right. So again, so let's move on. So it says marriage had a mythical precedence, and starting with the abduction of the Sabian women, which may reflect the archaic custom of bride abduction. Romulus and his band of male immigrants were rejected. Were rejected. Combinum the legal right to enter marriage. Right. So of course, they were rejected the right to marry, you know what I'm saying, those Sabian women, right, by their fathers. Okay. So the Sabian men, they said, hell no, y'all's not marrying our people. We not intermingling with you or anything like that. Y'all can kick rocks, right? So they had to go and they had to abduct these women in order for them to even get a chance or a shot, you know what I'm saying, at keeping or building their civilization, right? So it shows you how important marriage is to building civilizations, all right? Because you have to have children to carry on your name. You have to have those children grow up in order to build the civilization, man, that you're trying to build up. So that's why, as Israelites, man, it's important for us to take the aspect of marriage very seriously as well, all right? Because it is an institution in which we are trying to basically, build righteous families so that we can bring our nation back, man. So it says, let me read on. So it says, it says from the Sabians, according to Levi, Romulus and his band and his men, the Sabian abducted the Sabian maidens, but promised them an honorable marriage, right? So of course the big fancy weddings and things of that nature, right? So it says, in which they would enjoy the benefits of property, citizenship, and children, right? So, of course, those are the things in which they were promising them, all right? The benefits of property. Okay, so what happens when a man when a man marries a woman, right? Of course, if they were to divorce or whatever the case may have been, that woman, she gets half of everything, right? Also, she gets to share property and all of that, right? Of course, she become a citizen of the Roman Republic. You know what I mean? Have all of the benefits of citizenship, maybe tax free, all of that crap. All right, and also the children that come forth from, what I'm saying, the marriage. All right. So it says these three benefits seem to define the purpose of marriage in ancient Rome. All right. So this is pretty much like the origin of ancient Rome, all right, of marriage in ancient Rome, okay, just to let brothers and sisters know, all right, okay, boom, let's move on now, all right. Okay, so now next slide. So it says, so this is the term dealing with matrimonium, of course. So it says the word matrimonium, the root from the English word matrimony. It says defines the institution's main function involving the martyr, meaning the mother. It carries with it the implications of the man taking a woman in marriage to have children, right? So of course that's what marriage, of course, would be all about. All right, the scriptures tell us that. All right, it says when a man he finds a woman, you know what I mean, or he cleaves unto him a wife, or he leaves his father and mother and cleaves unto him a wife, and they become one flesh, right? They get married, then they have children. All right. So it says, so again, it says it carries with the implications of the man taking a woman in marriage to have children. It is the ideal uh, contra contraventionally shared by Romans as to the purpose of marriage. It says, which would be to produce legitimate children, citizens producing new citizens. So that's what it was all about to the Romans, right? Of course, that was the purpose of marriage, all right, to them. Okay, but then, man, you got to read about the corruption of Rome. Definitely check out the movie. I believe it's Pompey, right, or the documentary pertaining to Pompey. Man, you'll find out, man, Pompey was it was some weird stuff going on. You know what I'm saying, in that city, man, and that's why the Most High had to destroy it by that volcano, right? You'll still see the ash and remains of all the people that were there, man. All of the, the bestiality, the fornication, all of those things, man, that was going on in that city, man. You'll see why Augustus Caesar, man, had to go through a whole reformation, man, to change the people's outlook on marriage, right? It was crazy, man, because, man, you see when a lot of fornication comes into a nation, you know what I mean? You see marriage starts dwindling, you know what I mean? Fornication goes up. That means disease comes in, all of that. I'm going to explain a little bit about that stuff later, but, all of those things come in, man, and that definitely stunts the growth of a nation, all right? So that's why the Most High, man, told us, man, we had to stay on our P's and Q's about, righteous marriage, man, and not getting ourselves caught up in fornication and things like that. Why? Because the effects of that, the effects of fornication, terrible, man, terrible on a nation, destroy a nation from the inside out. That's why you see America is being destroyed from the inside out, all right, because the land is filled with whoredom, all right. So of course, that was the whole purpose of Roman marriage, to produce legitimate children, all right, not illegitimate children, or bastard children and all of that, not to produce bastard children or anything like that, right? So basically, they wanted to produce citizens, produce new citizens and all of that. So let me see real quick. Consortium, also marriage. All right. So I wanted to read this. This is a little note that I had. So it says, in order for the union of a man and a woman to be legitimate, there needed to be consent legally and morally, right? So of course, that's definitely true, all right? So there had to be a consent between a man and a woman, right, in order for the union to actually work, okay? Legally and morally, both parties had to be willing and intend to marry, and both needed their father's consent, right? So of course that's also scriptural as well, all right? We can go into the Bible and basically, verify that as well. Of course, how the man has to go to the father in order to receive the actual consent, in order to deal with, with the daughter, okay? So that's in the book of Genesis. All right. We'll get that in a minute as well. So then it says, if all other legal conditions were met, a marriage was made. All right. So whatever other legal conditions that were needed, that need to be talked about, then the marriage would go forth. It will go forth. All right. So it says, marriage, also called matrimony or wedlock, is a social or ritual recognition, recognized union between spouses that establishes the rights and oblations between them and their children, and between them and their in-laws, right? So all parties will be involved. The definition of marriage varies according to different cultures, but it is principally an institution in which interpersonal relationships, usually sexually, are acknowledged in some cultures. Marriage is recommended or considered to be compulsory before pursuing any sexual activity. When defined broadly, marriage is considered a cultural universal. So marriage is universal amongst all people. All right. To the next. Boom, boom, boom. So this is consortium, right? So the word consortium is used for the sharing of property, all right? Usually used in a technical sense for the property the property held by heirs, but could also be used in a context of marriage. Such usage was commonly seen in Christian writings, right? Bible. It says, however, the sharing of water and fire was symbolically important. It refers to the sharing of natural resources. Worldly possessions transfer automatically from the wife to the husband in archaic times, whereas in classical marriage, uh, whereas the classical marriage kept the wife's property separate. All right. So this is conventional conventions of Roman marriage. All right. So of course, I wanted to get that. I wanted to get this in Genesis chapter 28 about the father, about the man going to the father and speaking to the father. All right. So real quick, let me get that. Mm, here we go. Genesis chapter 29. So this is dealing with Jacob, man, when he had went to Padan to basically take a wife, all right, or Haran to take a wife of, of his of one of his cousins, all right. So now we're going to see how the whole procedure actually went. So now it says, of course, we'll start at Genesis chapter 29, and I'm gonna start at verse. I'm gonna start at verse. I started verse 15. And it says, and Laban said unto Jacob, because thou art my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wage be? And Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel thy younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days, for he loved for the love he had to her. Right. So it's just showing you, man, that was basically like how men will actually deal with, taking on a wife. Right. They will go to the father and they will ask the father, permission, man, to actually deal with, the daughter. Right. So in this case, you see that, Jacob wanted to marry. Right. That's what he explained to Laban. All right. So of course Laban was like, man, stay with me. All right. You my sister's son. So you know what? What you want to work for? He said, you know what? You have two daughters. I'll work for your youngest daughter, Rachel, hand in marriage. All right. 7 years I'll work for to pay off the dowry. All right. So that's what Jacob did. Okay. But you see that he asked the father, he just didn't go and take her. You see what I'm saying? So it was an order that, had to be followed. All right. So of course, you know what I mean? In all aspects of marriage, man, that order was followed also, or originally part of the protocol in Rome as well, as we just read. Okay. But as we see, sometimes things don't always, remain in certain cultures and societies. All right. So now, as you can see, due to like things like free marriage and all of that, those, the way this law, the way is shown to us here about going to the father, it no longer applies pretty much. You know what I'm saying? In the society, of the culture that we're in, and also in Roman society. All right. As you read. So remember, like I said, man, you go and watch the documentary on Pompey, man. That city. You see that it was some freaky stuff going on up in there. All right. So this is the conventions of Roman marriage. All right. So, so it says the lives of the elite Roman women were essentially determined by their marriages. Right. So it's showing you about the elite Roman women. Okay, so this is how your status was actually solidified. All right, and it was through marriage. Okay, so then it says we are best informed about families and both wealth and political standings, who largely inherited money. Excuse me, whose largely inherited money would follow both their sons and their daughters, right? So of course they had children. They would basically pretty much the money and things like that will follow their children, all right. So it says in the earliest period of Roman history, Manus marriage meant that a married woman would be subjected by her husband. All right, so it shows you that in Magnus marriage that a married woman, she would be subjected by her husband. So the husband had absolute complete power over, you know what I'm saying, his wife. Okay, so then it says, but that custom had died out by the first century BCE. So of course he said it had died out. All right, and this is in the this was like in, like you said, the first century BCE. So we going like damn near towards, you know, damn near like in the time of Christ. How this just completely died out. All right. So it says in favor of the free marriage, which did not grant a husband any rights over his wife or have any changing effect on a woman's status. All right. So of course that's what free marriage was. Okay. It did not have effect. You know, it did not have any type of effect. All right. The husband didn't have any type of power over the wife. Okay, so like the Magnus marriage was where the husband had all power over the wife, but the free marriage, the husband had no power over the wife. Yes, or excuse me, Manus marriage, Manus marriage. Sorry, I don't speak Latin. Latin words are a little harder for me to pronounce. It's like I don't speak Greek. Greek is a little harder for me to pronounce, but I can pronounce some Hebrew though. Crazy, right? But so of course, and then make sure she write down free marriage. All right, so good. So it says, like I said, so which did not grant a husband any right over his wife or have any changing effect on a wife's status. All right, so if she was a powerful woman, it didn't change the fact that she was a powerful woman. All right. Yes, free marriage was like that. So the husband didn't have any type of control over her status or anything like that. So this is like the definition of Manus marriage, right? So it says Manus was an ancient Roman type of marriage of which there were two forms of it. So it says cum manu and sin manu. In a cum manu marriage, the wife was placed under the legal control of the husband, right? So of course, the Roman man had take that wife, she was now under legal control of her husband. All right. So then, this was the Manus marriage. No, the wife was placed under the legal control of the husband. So remember, it said that the husband was the wife was subjugated unto the husband in the Manus marriage, right? So so this is what it's basically showing you, all right? So then the second form was in a sine manu marriage, the wife was still under the legal control of her father. All right. So it's basically showing you how it is in the scriptures. All right. So you see that when a woman is under her father's house, right, who has authority the over the woman? The father does, right? So just like Laban had authority over his two daughters, Leah and Rachel, right? So that's why he was able to deceive Jacob, saying, "Here, take Leah first, and then you can have Rachel." Right. So then, of course, and then you can also read about the aspect of the vow, right? How the husband, if he heard his wife make a vow, he could disannul the vow of his wife, right? And then also, if the father heard the vow, he could disannul the vow of his daughter. Okay, that's just showing you the power in which the type of power that the man had over his wife or his daughter. Okay, so in this aspect is pretty much the same thing. All right. So that's why it's showing you that marriage was basically universal. Some of the law was still the same, right? But remember, it says in the scriptures, man, that the nations, they just perverted the laws of the Most High. They began to change certain things, okay? um, oh yeah, you could let me get that for you real quick. It's in the book. I said in the book of Numbers, right? Let me get that. It's in yes, Numbers chapter 30. You can read Numbers chapter 30, and I'll read it real quick. I'll read a little bit of it, and just skip through it a little bit. So it says in Numbers chapter 30, in verse 1, it says, Moses spake unto the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. If any man vow a vow unto the Lord, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. Right? So if a man vow a vow, he had to keep that vow. All right. This is in Numbers chapter 30. Okay. So if a man vowed a vow, he had to keep that vow. All right. And it says in verse 3, if a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord and bind herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth, and her father hear her vow and her bond wherewith she hath bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. So if she made a vow, her father heard, and he didn't say anything about it, then she had to keep that vow, all right? Meaning the father allowed her to make that vow. Now the Most High about to give you the flip side of it. So now he says, verse 5, but if her father disallow her in the day that he heareth not any of her vow or of her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her because her father disallowed her. All right. So of course it's showing. So that's what it's showing you. The father had the power to do that. All right. He hears it. He said, "Boom, that's it. No, you ain't making no crazy vow like that. Now, you know what? Scratch that." Okay. So now we're gonna drop down and read verse 6. All right. And it says, if she had at all in husband when she vowed or uttered out of her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband hear it, and held his peace at her in the day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband disallow her on that day he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of non effect, and the Lord shall forgive her. Okay. But as it says in verse 9, but every vow a widow, um, and of her that is divorced, where we have bound their soul, shall stand a stand against her. So single women or women that do not have husbands or husbands that have died, their vow shall stand because they have no one to disannul that vow from, disannul them of that vow. So a married woman and a daughter, you know what I'm saying? If they have that authority figure over them, they can disannul it. All right. So basically, it's still showing you the same thing too. Like I said here in the man's marriage, all right. If a wife would be placed under the legal control of the husband, and it says, and the wife would, if the wife, of course, was still under her father's house, she would still be under legal control of her father. All right. So, and that's in all areas as well. It's like property, all of that stuff, man. The father had control, you had control. All right. The husband had control, the husband had control. Huh?
Isn't that out of order?
What?
The husband having control over his daughter still even after she's married.
No. And that's why they said it was two forms of it. right. So at that women at that time, all right, women were under the control. They were subject to their husbands. All right, at that time, you see what I'm saying. But there were other laws that the or that the Senate began to make that allowed women to basically pretty much, you know what I'm saying, have how can I say, have control of their own selves. They didn't have to be subject unto their husbands. They were equal, shall I say, right?
Yeah, that's how it works.
So let's read this. So this is the Augustan marriage laws, right? So it says, following the collapse of the Republic and the rise of the Augustus as sole ruler, right? So if you know anything about the Republic of Rome, all right. Of course, it was a lot of corruption that went on in the Republic. And of course, Rome has selected a ruler. His name was Gaius Augustus Caesar. All right. So it says, a sole ruler, moral legislation became a part of the new political order. All right. So, of course, when it talks about moral legislation, you know, that was a part of the new political order. Now they had to correct the problems of the nation, right? And he's going to show you the problems in which he had to correct. Okay. So it says, as Rome's first emperor, Augustus turned his attention in 18 BC to social reforms. Laws pertaining to marriage, parenting, and adultery were a part of his program to restore the males, the males minimum traditional social norms while consolidating his political authority and codifying a more rigid social hierarchy in the wake of a recent civil war. The appeal to old-fashioned values cloaked with radical overthrow the republic's participatory political institution by top down one man rule, right? So pretty much to sum it up, as it's showing you here, they pretty much, Julius Caesar pretty much just was gonna just destroy the old way, or excuse me, he's gonna bring back the old tradition and uh, get rid of the corruption that was going on uh, within uh, within the nation. All right, basically, pretty much. All right, that's what he wanted to do. That's why he had to go back, man. So of course, even as you can see, man, even within our nation, right? What's the thing that our people struggle with the most? Sexual sin, man, marriage, and things like that, family, man. So of course, as we see in the book of Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 68, especially verses 54 through 57, how our family structure will be destroyed. We're trying to repair that. All right. Huh? Deuteronomy chapter 28. You could write 54 through 57 down. So just like he shows you, man, laws that were pertaining to marriage, parenting, and adultery, all right, were a part of the program to restore, all right, the traditional social norms. So it says, among the upper class, marriage was less frequent, and and many couples who did not marry failed to produce offspring. Why do you think that is, Ayla? Real quick. Check this out. So it said among the upper classes, marriage was less frequent, and many couples who did not marry, excuse me, who did marry failed to produce offspring. Why do you think that is?
Um, well, this is wrong. It could be because homosexuality was being practiced. It could be because they had other wives that they were having children with.
Mm-hmm.
It could be because they were too concerned with other things than marriage.
So you're saying homosexuality was one of the causes? What else?
Other women
Uh,
that they work in for.
Prostitutes, prostitution, dealing with men that dealing with prostitutes and all that. We see how how the global elite of America deal up here, right? You know what I mean? Everything may look good. They got a wife and everything, but the wife just may be the cover up, right? They got one. They got what they were able to produce one child or whatever the case may be, but couldn't produce any more, right? Because they behinds was so damn nasty, you know, all of the diseases and things of that nature, man, spreading and stuff like that. Well, what happens? What happens when fornication sets in? When fornication sets in, then you have disease. Then with disease comes sterilization, and with sterilization, you can't produce children, right? You cannot. You see what I'm saying? So that's what began to happen, man, to the Romans. You know what I mean? Through the evil and through the wickedness, man. I believe, man. I believe it was an article, man, that I read a while back that stated how white people were becoming scarce, right? They feared becoming extinct, right? Because they're having a hard time reproducing themselves, right? So remember, white people's reproductive organs aren't as, how can I say, aren't as fertile or as productive, you know what I'm saying, as, blacks. You see what I'm saying? Quote unquote, black people's, reproductive system and organs, right? So, I mean, which is true, man. So that's what basically pretty much happens, man. So it says I'll read it from the top. So it says among the upper classes, marriage was less frequent, and many couples who did marry failed to produce offspring. Augustus implemented a series of laws pertaining to marriage and family life. So he had to implement these laws, all right? He said aimed at increasing the population of native Italians in Italy, right? So that was his plan. Okay, he had to change, you know what I'm saying, the way their people looked at marriage, okay, and family life. All right. So that was his aim, man, to increase the population of native Italians. Okay. So it says in Italy, encouraging marriage and having children. So now he was going on this campaign, man, showing the beauties of marriage and encouraging it, right, for his people. Okay. It says, and punishing adultery as a crime. All right. So that's what he had to begin to do, man. Punish adultery. All right. People had to look at this as a crime. Well, we already see that it's a crime in the scriptures, right? So where can I find that at, Jalen? Where can I find adultery at as being a punishable crime by death? You should know this one. Well, let's go there, dude. Let's go to Leviticus. Let's go to Leviticus chapter what? Chapter 20. All right. So in Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 10, it says, and the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. All right. So that's what's supposed to happen when you commit adultery. So you see, for years, man, the Romans, they allowed a lot of adultery, man, to go on amongst their elite and amongst their people. All right. Men sleeping with other men's wives and destroying those families. And when those families are destroyed, people be killing each other, all of that stuff, man. So, of course, you would see this as a problem. And then this would be the collapse of your social structure, right? So it'd be the same thing even for us in Israel. If that was to continue on, brothers sleeping with other brothers' wives, how in the world, man, would we be able to rebuild and repair families? It wouldn't work that way, all right? It wouldn't work that way if a man does not honor another man's marriage. You see what I'm saying? So that destroys a nation, and that's why the Most High made that punishable by death in the beginning. Yes, Nevada. What is adultery? Adultery is when a man, right, sleeps with another man's wife, all right, or when a woman leaves her husband and sleeps with another man. That is what you would call adultery. Okay. Let's read the scripture one more time. All right. In Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 10, and it says, and the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. right? That's what happens, okay, in adulterous situations. All right. So now let's read it. Let's read that. Let's read this insert one more time. It says, among the upper classes, marriage was less frequent, and many couples who did marry failed to produce offspring. When you fail to produce offspring, that means your behinds is sterile. All right. All them damn STDs and things like that, man, messed up your reproductive organs and your systems. You see, and then of course, the Lord, He shuts wombs. All right. So it says Augustus implemented a series of laws pertaining to marriage and family life aimed at increasing the population of native Italians in Italy, encouraging marriage and having children, and punishing adultery as a crime. Heavier taxes were heavier taxes were assessed on unmarried men and women without husbands. Without husbands, but privileges and recognition was granted for marriage and childbearing. Right. So, Allah, what does that mean?
If you were not married, you were taxed higher. And they made it to where you would want to get married in order to avoid those taxes.
Absolutely. So again, the sister gave a beautiful, beautiful answer. You know what I mean? She said that they made it to where you had to pretty much get married, right? So if you wanted to avoid those heavier the taxes, them taking out of your money, you know what I mean? If you wanted to avoid that, then you would make sure that you would go get married, right? And then of course you would be granted, of course, great privilege, and also they give you money for having children. All right. Do you not see that today in here in America? Absolutely. All right. You do see that. You know what I mean? If you don't have that marriage license, you're not registered as being married, then of course, what do? They take a chunk out of your check. All right. You being single or filing your taxes as single or whatnot, right? So you don't get the same privileges as one who is married, you know what I'm saying, in the society. Okay. So that's how Rome, or how Augustus Caesar set it up. Okay. So of course, all of this was definitely going on during the time of, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, or Yahweh Shai Mashiach, right? Just go back to the book of Luke chapter 2, man. You'll see that this was the same Caesar, man, that was in power. All right. During his time. Okay. So the book of Luke, definitely check out the book of Luke chapter 2. All right. So again, so it says heavier taxes were assessed on the unmarried men and women without husbands, but privileges and recognition were granted for marriage and childbearing. So it says so this is dealing with divorce, all right? Divorce from the menace marriage, right? Divorce like marriage, changed and evolved throughout Roman history. As the centuries passed and ancient Rome became more diverse, the laws and the customs of divorce also changed and became more diversified to include the customs and beliefs of all different peoples, right? Divorce has had always been a common occurrence in Rome, and from the beginning of ancient law in Rome, men had the possibility of the possibility of divorcing their wives. Although this custom was usually reserved for serious marital faults such as adultery, making copies of the household key, consuming wine. That's crazy, man. Making a copy of the household key. Women couldn't have the household key.
So a man could divorce his woman for drinking wine,
Yes.
having a household key,
Yes.
and what else?
And being an adulteress.
Well, an adultery.
And infertility.
Oh,
Yes.
so
So a woman could be divorced for those particular marital faults, as they call it, right? Making copies of household keys, consuming wine, and or infertility. It could be employed by a husband at any time. So a man, he could basically divorce his wife at any time he so choose, right? It says for many centuries only husbands had this privilege, but wives were finally included in this process and given permission to divorce their husbands as Rome entered into the classical age, right? So make sure you look up classical age of Rome. All right. And that'll definitely let you know the reason why women were definitely allowed to divorce their husbands at the same time. All right. So definitely as just as well as a man could divorce his wife. Now a woman had literal power to divorce her husband. You see what I'm saying? At any given time. That's crazy, man. Because then you'll see why Christ was saying some of the things he was saying about marriage, man, in the New Testament, right? Especially to his disciples, you know what I mean? How he was breaking it down, man. You know, a man that marries a woman that's divorced, or a man that, uh, marries a woman that's pretty much put away or whatever, commits adultery, you know, it's a reason why, man. It's a reason why all of that was going down. So you'll see, and Rome had a big influence, man, on on the Israelite culture, man, at that time as well. All right. So remember, Israel was like a Roman province. You know what I mean? Remember, in 65 BC, it was taken over, right, by the Romans. Okay. So Israel became a Roman province, man. So remember, many of the laws were also imposed on the Israelites, man, that were there. So they still allowed them to practice their religion within the land, but they were still being overseen by what you would call military governors. All right. Like Pontius Pilate and Herod and the Agrippas and things of that nature, right? And them, all right, excuse me. So women, so women were also given or granted the privilege to also be able to divorce their husbands. As you see here in America, women are able to do the same thing as well. All right. So it says the manus marriage, all right, custom ended in the first century BCE, and the free marriage divorce emerged. Right. With this, the reason for any divorce became irrelevant. Now check that out. It's Allah. Tell me why that right there is important for us to understand. It says that Manus marriage custom ended in the first century BCE, and free marriage divorce emerged. With this, the reason for any divorce became irrelevant.
So it didn't matter. You could get divorced for whatever.
So now you could get divorced for whatever reason you wanted to. It didn't necessarily, your wife didn't have to necessarily make copies of the household keys. She didn't have to be consuming too much mind. If you got tired of her, you could just leave her. We're divorced. Get out of my house now. Or you know what? I need to make this political alliance with this political force over here. I need my son to marry King Agrippa's daughter. So you know what? My son already has a wife. He can't have two. So you know what? You divorce your wife right here. Send her away. Go marry King Agrippa's daughter. You see what I'm saying? That's what they also did, that man, to form those political alliances as well. Okay. Let's check this out. So then it says, so manus marriage customs ended in the first century BCE, and the free marriage divorce emerged. With this, the reason for any divorce became irrelevant. Either spouse could leave a marriage at any point. At any point. So now, wait a minute. Let's go to the New Testament real quick. Let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 19, real quick. Matthew chapter 19. And I'm going to start at verse 1. And it says, and it came to pass that when Yahushua had finished these sayings, he departed from Galilee and came into the coast of Judea beyond Jordan. And a great multitude followed him, and he healed them there. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Hmm. Interesting, right? We just got through reading right here, man, that in the first century BCE, they're in the first century BCE, right? So this was a law that actually was enforced during this time, right? You know what I mean? The Jews didn't have no law like that. The Romans did, right? Romans did. And as we just read right here, free marriage, divorce, and merge with this, the reasons for any divorce could be irrelevant. Either spouse could leave a marriage at any point, right? So now we see that this is a Pharisee asking Christ, trying to tempt him. You know what I'm saying? Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? For every cause? Let's read. And he answered and said unto them, have ye not read that he made them at the beginning, made them male and female, right? So this is what Christ has to explain, man. So Christ is like he's already privy, man, to the BS that they're trying to do, man. They're trying to get Christ to go against the government, right? Because what is that called? Treason. You see what I'm saying? He speak against the government, its laws, its policies, and this, that, and the third, right? So of course, treason. So this is what they're trying. That's how they're trying to trip Christ up. But then Christ is too cunning for that. He's like, man, I'm gonna go back to the scriptures. Did you not read that he made them male and female in the beginning? Let's read on. And said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. That's the question. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. So he said, what God has joined together. Remember, marriage was given by who? It was given by the Most High, right? Marriage was a union given by God from in the beginning. So this is what Christ is going back to. Okay. So then he says, let's read it again. I'm sorry, we'll read it again. So he says, wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. So when they're two, they get married, they become one, right? He says, what therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder, right? So these this divorce, right, was a device which man, you know what I'm saying, was beginning to abuse and use. All right. So we know that the Jews had their own method of divorce, right? Where a man, when you read in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24 and 1, where a man, if he didn't like, if there was some sort of bad quality in that woman, right, he would give her a bill of divorcement and send her out of the house, right? So he's going to bring this up in this, okay? So then he says, boom, 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 boom. So he says, let no man put asunder. Then said unto him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement to put her away? So now he's like, so now, well, wait a minute, okay. So now, why did Moses then give a bill? Tell man to give a bill of divorcement, a writing of divorcement, and send a woman out of his house, and she could be another man's wife, right? So this is what Christ said after that. So he said, and he said unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered you to put away your wives. From the beginning, it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife except it be for fornication. So now Christ is letting them know. You already know the law, what it says, man. The only way that a man can put away his wife is if it is for the cause of fornication, right? Adultery, incest, homosexuality, bestiality. Those are the grounds, the causes for a divorce. All right. So then he says, and I say to you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. Right? So he said, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. So if you put away your wife for any other reason outside of those reasons, you just committed adultery. Pretty much, that's what Christ is saying. So basically, you see how the Roman society was, man. It was built. It was basically, you see the whole fabric and the foundation, man, of their law, man, was pretty much just filled with the aspects of adultery, right? A man and a woman could just pretty much just say, all right, it's not working between us. Go, leave. We're divorced, right? That's what they saying, man. And that breeds adultery. because now that woman she gonna move on to a different relationship. That man gonna move on to a different relationship, and they're basically still under the covenant of marriage one to another if she has not committed any type of act of adultery. You see what I'm saying? So, so let's finish reading. So he says, and I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whosoever marrieth her, which is put away, doeth commit adultery. So when you marry a woman that is divorced, you commit adultery too. All right. So and he says, his disciples said unto him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. So they was like, man, if this is the case, then it's not good to marry then. If this be the case with a man and his wife, right? So of course, man, that's how you have to that's how you have to basically look at it. All right. So remember, man, the Roman society, man, was still heavily influencing our people, man, and our people were going by or abiding by those laws. All right. That's why Christ had to come back, man, and reiterate and teach the laws to our people. Okay. For those reasons exactly. All right. So now, as he says here, man, so man, you marry a woman that's put away or that's divorced, guess what? You just committed adultery, brother. You see what I'm saying? Just by this law which we read, the divorce from free marriage, right? Which was being practiced amongst our people. All right. Just like our people practice the laws of America now, and they still doing the same thing, man. But they're calling relationships girlfriend, boyfriend, and all of that. There's no such thing as girlfriend or boyfriend. All right. It's either you a husband or so you a wife. All right. Either you an adulterer or you an adulteress. Okay. But let's continue reading. So it says, either spouse could leave in marriage at any point. Poverty during a marriage, property during a marriage was kept separate under Roman law, and this left only the dowry in common. In the case of adultery, the husbands got to keep their portion of the dowry, but without the involvement of the adulterer women would take most, if not all, of the dowry with them, as well as their personal property. However, the woman had to get permission from the government to have a divorce, while a man did not. All right. So you see that the woman had to get permission, right? So she had to go get papers in order to be able to file for a divorce, right? As for the man, he did not have to do that. All right. Especially if there was property and money involved. So, of course, we just read that in the book of Matthews. All right. So now, check this out. So it says here, this is what we want to check out. We want to check this out right here. All right. Um, it says prohibition of immortality. All right. Immorality, excuse me. All right. So basically, the prohibition of immorality. All right. So the Bible speaks against any type of immorality in marriage. Okay. So, of course, it opens up in the book of Hebrews, chapter 13 and verse 4. And it says, marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers, God will judge. Right. So, of course, what does that mean, Ahla? Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 4 says, marriage is honorable in all, and a bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. Yes, that's right. So it says that the Most High only honors righteous marriage. All right. So now we're just going to go into some aspects of that. Okay. So it says, from the beginning, God intended that sexuality finds that, From the beginning, God intended that sexuality finds its expression solely within the covenant of a heterosexual marriage, right? It says God's word condemns specific sexual acts or behaviors as sinful and subject to the wrath of God. All right. So now check this out. So we're going to get some of those. So it says adultery. All right. That's the first one. All right. You can write that down. So it says, which refers to sexual relations between a married woman and a man, not her, that's not her husband. All right. So that's one of the acts, man, that's prohibited, okay, by the Most High, all right, according to the law, okay. So you can go to Exodus chapter 20 and verse 14, Leviticus 20 and 10, and it gives you the scriptures are outlined up there as well if you need them, all right. So those are pretty much, the scriptures that show us, man, that look, adultery is not permitted according to scriptures, man, when you're dealing in marriage, all right. Um, so it says homosexual acts. All right, that's number two. That's another one that is not permitted, man, in marriage. All right, so that's why it said, man, marriage is honorable in all, and is the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. Okay, so it says homosexual acts, which refer to sexual intimacy between persons of the same gender. All right, which is completely unlawful according to the word of the Heavenly Father. Right. So we see Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed because they were heavily, involved in that type of lifestyle. Right. Of course, the Most High rained fire and brimstone on that place, man. Y'all know this, y'all know that story. So it says so you could read Genesis, read Genesis chapter 18 and verses 20. You can read Leviticus chapter 18 to 22. That's dealing with the aspect of showing how homosexuality is unlawful, the judgment for Leviticus 20 and 13. So it shows you, man, that uh, those acts, man, are not permitted within the very foundation of marriage, man. So brothers are sitting there, man, that got got two women and stuff like that, and he having menage a trois and threesomes and all of that stuff, man. That's pretty much, man. You have a homosexual sandwich right there. You see what I'm saying? Or two men on one woman. That's a homosexual sandwich in itself, right? Two men rubbing sticks. You see what I'm saying? Or two women with carpet. Trying to clean each other carpet and all of that stuff, man. All of that stuff is just sickening, man. But the Bible speaks against it, man, completely, and that's why our people got to clean themselves up. All right. Of course, First Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 9, it explains, man, that unrighteousness shall not inherit the kingdom of the Most High. All right. So the kingdom that is going to be established here on earth as the kingdom of God, Yahweh Shai being our King, our Lord, ain't none of that's going to be amongst us at all. All right. So we already know. So, so then, of course, homosexual acts, bestiality, which refers to sexual acts with animals, right? We know that America allows that in its military now, where you have military personnel that can go and they can have sexual relations with animals and things of that nature. Homosexuality is also now widely acceptable throughout the ranks of the military, American military, and things of that nature, right? Incest, which refers to intimacy between two persons related by blood, right? Meaning the nearest of kin, right? Brothers and sisters, sisters and brothers, stepbrother, stepsister, all of that stuff, man, that is an abomination in the eyes of the Heavenly Father. All right. Of course, boom, 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 boom. Transvestitism, that's dealing with men wearing the opposite, when men wearing women's clothes. I put it that way: men wearing women's clothes, women wearing men's clothes, right? You know what I mean? And getting a kick out of it, man. And it's just crazy, man, because that's a spirit, man, that comes on upon a person when a man puts on female attire, man. They become more feminine. Then you have a woman when she puts on masculine men's wear, she becomes more masculine, right? So it says the practice, especially of men, of wearing clothing usually associated with the opposite sex. All right? Or psychologically gratified, gratification, excuse me, while they receive some sort of psychological gratification from putting on women's clothing, right? So you see that those weird men that put on they're defecating women's underwear, and they get a kick out of that crap, you know. So that's basically what it's talking about. It says related to this is the intent to physically adopt a gender other than one's birth gender. All right. So of course, all of these offenses threaten the welfare of marriage, family, and the community. So as you can see, all of those things, man, were happening within the very fiber of the Roman Empire, right? And this is how their marriages, man, were ended up started turning out sour, right? So all of these things enter into any nation, any kingdom, man, and that's why it's gonna fall. As you see, America, it's happening. We see it happening daily. We see it happening all the time, man. Men putting on women's clothing, women putting on men's clothing. We see women raping men out in the middle of the street. You know what I mean? Men doing the same damn thing, man. This place is going to hell in a handbasket. You talk about the lake of fire. This place is going to be the lake of fire. All right. So you know, of course, man, that was um that was pretty much it, man, dealing with that. But of course, you know, it's it's pretty much self-explanatory after that, man. Dealing with the laws of marriage, of course, going to the book of Genesis, chapter 2, showing how Adam was pretty much Adam was created. Then of course he had a helpmeet that was created for him. The Most High brought them together, made them husband and wife. You know what I mean? To basically uh, replenish the earth. You know what I'm saying? Subdue it. That's when the Most High began to institute marriage, and then of course Genesis chapter 1, 26 through 28, I believe. Dealing when the Most High created man, male and female, and told them to replenish the earth, be fruitful and multiply. Um, all of that. All right, that has a lot to do with marriage itself. All right. So of course we know biblical marriage is completely different from what we know as marriage here in America, right? So of course, let me get this real quick. This is dealing with the so-called marriage license, as they say, right? Lord ain't give Adam and Eve a marriage license. Hold on, let me get it real quick. Let me pull it up. Hope everybody, man, is definitely receiving some understanding. Um, okay, here we go. So it says marriage license. A marriage license is a document issued either by a church or state authority, right? So, of course, the church or the state authority, this is how you can obtain basically a marriage license, right? You can go get married at the church, or you can go to the state and they'll marry you, right? So basically, it's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same thing, all right? Because in order for you to establish a church, you got to have a 501c3, right? Which the government gives you. All right. So it says authorizing a couple to marry. So how were you authorized to be married, right? And we see that marriage was instituted by the Heavenly Father, right? It was given to us by Him. Okay. Let's read. Let's go there real quick, man. So that you see that I'm not lying. Let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 2. Marriage was given to man by God. All right. And it says, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So there was no sin found in them. All right. So of course, it shows you, man, that the aspect of marriage was now being set in place. All right. Or the whole process and procedure of it. Okay. So now you see that marriage wasn't given by man, it was given by the Most High. All right. It was given by God. Okay. So it says a marriage license is a document issued either by the church or a state or state authorities authorizing a couple to marry. The procedure for obtaining a license varies between countries and changes over time. Marriage licenses began to be issued in the Middle Ages to permit a marriage which would otherwise be illegal. For instance, if the necessary period of notice for the marriage had not been given. Today, they are a legal requirement in some jurisdictions and may also serve as a record of the marriage itself. So that's pretty much what it is. It's just pretty much a record stating that you're married. That's it. All right. So what also it and of course, just like we read here in in the little PowerPoints, man, where it showed you how, basically pretty much in Roman society, if you got married, there were benefits to it. If you were married, you didn't get taxed. You see what I'm saying? You didn't get taxed heavily, all right, by the government, okay? But the unmarried, those who were unmarried, they got taxed by the Roman government, all right? So there were certain benefits and privileges to being married. All right. So it's the same thing with having a marriage license. There's benefits to it. Okay. So as in other jurisdictions, a license is not required. In some jurisdictions, a pardon can be obtained for marrying without a license. And in some jurisdictions, common law marriage and marriage by cohabitation or representations are also recognized. These do not require a marriage license, right? So like common law marriage, that's when you've been living with somebody for so long of a period of time, right? I think what here in California is what you have to be with somebody for 10 years in order to be considered common law married.
5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years, right? To be considered basically common law married, right? So it says they do not require a marriage license. There are also some jurisdictions where marriage license do not exist at all, and marriage certificates is given to a couple after the marriage ceremony has taken place. All right. So pretty much, man, as we can see, the marriage license, that's something that man deals with, right? The Most High doesn't deal with that, all right? But let's go back to the scriptures. That's why Christ said, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder, right? If marriage was given by God, then of course we see that, you know what I'm saying, the marriage license has nothing to do with the Most High. All right. But you see, you have some brothers that's very sensitive about it. You got to get a marriage license to protect your wife, protect your family. Well, yeah, that's true. Like I said, there are benefits and privileges to it, right? To having a marriage license. But that still doesn't just the fact that you are considered married if you have sexual relations, and we're going to read that. This is in the book of Exodus chapter 22, and I'm going to read verse 17 or verse 16, and it says, if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, meaning she's not married to anybody or engaged, and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. All right. So, of course, it's showing you right there that a man is, if a man entices a maid, so he seduces this woman, he tempts her, whatever the case may be, weakens her will, and she's not married to anybody, he lays with her, meaning has sexual relations, he shall surely endow this woman to be his wife, meaning that that's your wife now. You lay with her, that's your woman now. You take her, all right? So of course, that's why, man, that's why it's crazy, man. You know what I mean? People sit there and talk about, so when you gonna get married? Ooh, I've been married. I've been married. You see what I'm saying? So just like you've been married almost 30, 40 times, man. You've been married to almost 66 different women. What are you talking about? That's why Christ had told that woman, man, let me get that real quick. With the five husbands, right? He was like, I'm gonna go there. Let me get that real quick in John. She says, Sir, I perceivest thou art a prophet. How did you know? It ain't hard to tell. Here we go. St. John chapter 4, and I'm gonna read verse I'm gonna start at verse 15. It says, the woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Yahweh Shai said unto her, Go, call thy husband and come hither. Right? So he's like, Hey, go get your husband. Let's do this in order. Go get your husband and come on. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm not gonna break you down without your husband present. Let's go. So he says, the woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yahweh Shai said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. So you said you have no husband, right? Check this out. For thou hast had five husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that sayest thou truly, right? So yeah, that's true. You right, you don't have a husband, yeah, but you've had five, right? So of course, man. So it's pretty much just showing you, man. Like, look, you lay down with somebody that's considered your spouse. You understand? So just like a woman, she sat there, man, and of course she ain't wickedness, man. She don't know no better, you know. So she got all of these. She got these multitudes of husbands, man, and you know, that's like it's like wow. But it's just basically what I'm just saying is it just goes to show, man, like the sex is what officiates the situation. You know what I mean? Now they do have like written agreements and covenants of marriage. Dealing with like the kintubah and stuff like that, like a written agreement between the man and the woman. You know what I'm saying? The woman writing her duties down and stuff like that, in which they agree upon, right? You know, but nonetheless, you know what I'm saying? That's something that we don't see there, the kintubah, right? So we don't practice it. You know what I mean? So we know the Most High knows what's up. Yeah, my brother has sent me something on the marriage license, right? So let me check this out real quick. One of my officers, he says a marriage license application is a request or your master's for the permission to marry. If you ever had any claim of sovereignty before that date, you lost it completely. When you applied for a marriage under married under a marriage license, sovereignty means to assert one's independence and to claim to be self-governing. The license isn't necessary and never has been because a marriage has always been just a contract. True, witnessed by God between a man and a woman who told you that you must apply for a marriage license, for a license. It is the official you chose to conduct your ceremony. The official just happens to be a licensed government official, and his license prevents him from conducting marriage ceremonies without the insurance of marriage license. Did Moses or Yahweh Shai ever say or profess that a marriage is not recognized by God without a license? True. So he says, here's the fraud behind the marriage license. Those who apply for a marriage person to a marriage license have now added a third party to their marriage contract. The third party is the master by and through in his agent, the corporate state. The marriage license bestows the state with a legal right to decide the fate of the husband, wife, and the possessions they produce during their marriage. So it says, should the marriage fail, The divorce must now be decided by and through the state corporate court by a corporate judge, and the judge's first and foremost concern is the interest of the state. The interest of the bride and groom is now secondary. That's crazy. So then it goes on to say, Van Kosten versus Van Kosten, 50 154 NE 146. It says a comment by the judge deciding this divorce says it's it all. Excuse me. This divorce says it all. The ultimate ownership of all property is the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government. An example: laws amounting to mere use must be in accordance with the law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. Also see Senate document number 43 and the Congress, of the 73rd Congress, first session, and Brown versus Welsh, U.S. Supreme Court. The term license is defined in law as a permit to do something illegal. So it says Black Law Dictionary, the 6th and 7th edition. Therefore, all licenses and permits to violate the only real law in alien, excuse me, ineligible rights are the rights bestowed. If I said that right. But that's beautiful information given by my officer, man. The water, my brother, for real. We definitely have to go back and break this down, man, in full detail. So, of course, as we said before, you know what I'm saying. The institution of marriage was given by the Most High, and it is not. And your marriage is not determined by a license, all right, or a permit that you get, all right, by the state, okay, to take your possessions and all of that, all right. So, of course, we're gonna end class there, and you know, thank you, for definitely joining us, man, for another Sabbath service. Of course, we'll be having our closing Sabbath service tomorrow evening. So you can definitely join us 5 p.m. That's when we'll be having our closing Sabbath class. So of course, man, all praises to the Most High, the water to my brothers and sisters that are definitely watching. You can go back and look at the video and check out the information um, as the video process and then uploads to YouTube. So of course, Kwame Yasharala rise to the nation of Israel. And with that, I'm gonna definitely say shalom to the 12 tribes of Israel. Peace.